These brochures I naturally did not trust as far as I could throw them out the window. Even Pittman, after all, had once been chosen in all Kentucky City, on the basis of what I do not know. Its abundance of potato bugs and gossip, perhaps. I knew that how people could toot their own horn without an earthly cause. And so what I promised myself is that I would drive west until my car stopped running, and there I would stay. But then there were some things I hadn't considered. Mama taught me well about tires and many other things besides, but I knew nothing of rocker arms, and I did not know anything about the Great Plain. The sight of it filled me with despair. I turned south from Wichita, Kansas, thinking I might find a way around it, but I didn't. There was Central Oklahoma. I had never imagined that any part of a round earth could be so flat. In Kentucky you could never see too far, since there were always mountains blocking the other side of your view, and it left you the chance to think something might good just be over the next hill. But out there on the plain, it was all laid out right in front of you, and no matter how far you looked, it didn't get any better. Oklahoma made me feel there was nothing left to hope for. My car gave out somewhere in the middle of a great emptiness that, according to the road signs, was owned by the Cherokee tribe. Suddenly the steering wheel bore no relation to where the car was going. By the grace of some miracle I surely did not yet deserve, I managed to wobble off the highway, all in one piece, and find a service station. The man who straightened out my rocker arm was named Bob Tutu. I am not saying he didn't ask a fair price. I should have been able to fix it myself, but he went home that night with his pocket full of something near half the money I had. I sat in the parking lot looking out over the godless stretch of nothing and came to the closet I have ever come to cashing in and plowing under. But there was no sense in that. My car was fixed. I had to laugh, really. All my life, Mama had talked about the Cherokee Nation as our ace in the hole. She had an old grandpa that was full-blooded Cherokee, one of the few that got left behind in Tennessee, because he's too old or too ornery to get marched over to Oklahoma. Mom would say, if we run out of luck, we can always go to live on the Cherokee Nation. She and I both had enough blood to qualify. According to Mama, if you're 1/8 or more, they let you in. She called this our head rights. Of course, if she had ever been there, she would have known it was not a nice place you ever go to live without some kind of lethal weapon aimed at your hind end. It was clear to me that the whole intention of bringing the Cherokees here was to get them to lie down and die without a fight. The Cherokees believed God was in the trees. Mama told me this. When I was a kid, I would climb as high as I could in a tree and not come down till dinner. That's your Indian blood, she would say. You're trying to see God. From what I could see, there was not one tree in the entire state of Oklahoma. The sun was headed fast for the flat horizon, and then there would be nothing but 12 hours of headlights in front of me. I was in a hurry to get out there. My engine was still running from Bob Tutu's jumper cables, and I hated to let a good start go to waste. But I was tired and didn't want to begin a night of driving without a cup of coffee and something to eat. I drove across the big patch of dirt that lay between the garage and another small brick-shaped building that had a neon Budweiser light in the window. When I drove out to the front, a swarm of little boys came down on my car like bees on a bear. "Wash your windows, lady," they said. $1 for the whole car. I got no windows, I told them. I reached back and put my hand through the side window hole to show them. See, just the windshield. Lucky me, because I got no $1 either. The boys went around the car putting their hands through all the window holes again and again. I thought twice about leaving my stuff in the car while I went to the restroom. I didn't have anything worth taking, but then it was all I had. I asked them, "You boys live around here?" They looked at each other. "Yeah," one of them said. "He does. He's my brother. Them two don't." "You ever heard of a Polaroid memory?" The big one nodded. The other one just stared. "Well, I got one," I said. "It's just like a camera. My memory just took a picture of what y'all look like. So don't take any stuff out of my car, okay? You take any stuff, you're in for it. The kids backed off from the car, rubbing their hands on their sides, like they were wiping off anything their hands might have already imagined grabbing onto. After the cool night, the hot air inside the bar hit me like something you could swim through. Near the door there was a wire rack of postcards. Some had Indians in various hokey poses, but most were views from the air of Oral Roberts University, which apparently was in the vicinity, although I'm pretty sure if it had been within 200 miles I could have seen it from the parking lot. I picked out one of the two Indian women on it, and an older and a younger one, pretty one standing by side. She was standing side by side next to some corn grinding thing. I had often wondered which 1/8 of me was Cherokee, and in this picture I could begin to see it. The long straight hair and the slender wrist bones. The younger one was wearing my two favorite colors, turquoise and red. I could write on it to my mama, "Here's us." I sat down at the counter and gave the man a dime for the postcard. I nodded when he pointed the pot of coffee at me, and he filled my cup. The jukebox was playing Kenny Rogers and the TV behind the counter was turned on, although the sound was off. It was some program about or from Oral Roberts University, which I recognized from the postcards. Frequently a man with clean, fat hands and a crest of hair like a woodpecker would talk on and on without sound. I presumed this was Oral Roberts himself. Although, of course, I can't say for certainly that it was. From time to time, a line of blue writing would run across the bottom of the screen. Sometimes it gave a telephone number, and sometimes it just said, "Praise the Lord." I wrote my postcard to Mama. "Grandpa had the right idea," I told her. "No offense, but the Cherokee Nation is headed west. Love, Mom." It didn't seem right just yet to sign it Taylor. The place was cleared out except for two men at the counter, a white guy and an Indian. They both wore cowboy hats, I thought to myself. I guess how Indians can be cowboys, too, though probably not vice versa. The Indian man wore a brown hat, and had a brown, fine-looking face that reminded me of an eagle. Not that I ever actually seen an eagle. He was somewhere between young and not so young. I tried to imagine having a great-grandpa with a nose like that and such a smooth chin. The other one in the gray hat looked like he had a mean streak to him. You could tell that the kind that's looking for trouble. They were drinking beers and watching Oral on the silent TV, and once in a great while they would say something to each other in a low voice. They might have been on their first couple beers, or they might have been drinking since sunup. With some types you can't tell until it's too late. I tried to call where I had been at sunup that day. It was in St. Louis, Missouri, where they had that giant McDonald's thing towering over the city, but that didn't seem possible. That seemed like about a blue moon ago. "You got anything to eat that costs less than $1? I asked the old guy behind the counter. He crossed his arms and looked at me for a minute, as if nobody had ever asked him that before. "Ketchup," the gray-hat cowboy said. "Earl serves up a mean bottle of ketchup, don't you, Earl?" He slid the ketchup bottle down the counter so hard it ran my cup and spilled about 5 cents worth of coffee. "You think being busted is a joke?" I asked him. I slid the bottle back and hit the beer mug dead center, although it did not spill. He looked at me and then looked back to the TV, like I wasn't the kind of thing to be bothered with. It made me want to spit nails. "He don't mean nothing by it, miss," Earl told me. "He's got a bug up his butt. I can get you a burger for 99 cents. I'm like, "Okay," I told Earl. Maybe 10 or 15 minutes passed before the food came, and I kept myself awake trying to guess what the fat hands man was trying to say on the TV screen. Earl's place could have done with a scrub. I could see through the open door into the kitchen, and the black grease on the back of the stove looked like it had been there since the dawn of man. The air in there was so hot and still I felt like I had to breathe it twice to get any oxygen out of it. The coffee did nothing to wake me up. My food came just as I was about to step outside for some air. I noticed another woman in the bar sitting at one of the tables near the back. She was a round woman, not too old, wrapped in a blanket. It was not an Indian blanket, but a plain pink wool blanket, with the satin band sewed on the edge, exactly like one Mama and I had at home. Her hair lay across her shoulders in a pair of skinny, lifeless plaits. She was not eating or drinking, but fairly often she would glance up at the two men, or maybe just one of them. I couldn't really tell. The way she looked at him made me feel like if I had better sense, I'd be scared. Earl's 99-cent burger brought me around a little, though I still felt like my head had been stuffed with that fluffy white business they use in life preservers. I imagined myself stepping outside in the wind just scattering me away. I would float out over the flat, dark plain like the silvery fuzz from a milkweed pod. Putting it off, I read all the signs on the walls, one by one, which said things like, "They can't fire me," "Slaves have to be sold," and "In case of fire, yell fire." The television kept on saying, "Praise the Lord, 1-800-THE-LORD." I tried to concentrate on keeping myself all in one place, even if it wasn't a spot I was crazy about. Then I went outside. The air was cool and I drank it too fast, getting a little dizzy. I sat with my hands on the steering wheel for a few minutes, trying to think to myself into the right mood for driving all night across Oklahoma. I jumped when the speck on the windshield I jumped when she's pecked on the windshield. It was the round woman in the blanket. "No thanks," I said. I thought she wanted to wash the windshield, but instead she went around to the other side and opened the door. "You need a lift someplace?" I asked her. Her body, her face, and her eyes were all around. She was someone you could have drawn a picture of by tracing around dimes and quarters in jar tubs. She opened up the blanket and took out something alive. It was a child. She wrapped her blanket around and around until it became a round bundle with the head. Then she set this bundle down on the seat of my car. "Take this baby," she said. It wasn't a baby exactly. It was probably old enough to walk, though not so big that it couldn't be easily carried. Somewhere between a baby and a person. "Where do you want me to take it?" She looked back at the bar, and then looked at me. "Just take it." I waited a minute, thinking that soon my mind would clear, and I would understand what she was saying. I didn't. The child had the exact same round eyes. All four of those eyes were hanging there in the darkness, hanging on me, waiting. The Budweiser sign blinked on and off, throwing a faint light that made the whites of their eyes look orange. "Is this your kid?" She shook her head. "My dead sister's." "Are you saying you want to give me this child?" "Yes. If I want a baby, I should have stayed in Kentucky," I informed her. "I could have had babies coming out of my ears by now." A man came out of the bar, gray hat or brown hat. I couldn't tell because my car was parked some distance from the door. He got into a pickup, but didn't start the ignition or turn on the lights. "Is that your man in the bar?" "In there?" I asked her. "Don't go back in there. I'm not saying why. Just don't." "Look," I said, "even if you wanted to, you can't just give someone a kid."